It's time for What's Your Favorite on the WDW Reflections Podcast.
This is a little thing we like to call What's Your Favorite? Each week, one of your hosts brings with them a question to ask the other two guys. Those two hosts don't know the questions ahead of recording and must answer the question on the spot. This week, I, Dewey, get to take on What's Your Favorite? So, gentlemen, here's the question I posed to you this week. What's your favorite between the Liberty Square Riverboat attraction or the Walt Disney World Railroad? So let me give you a couple of words here that explains those two attractions. So the Liberty Square Riverboat attraction says, steam into American history aboard the majestic colonial era Liberty Bell Riverboat and enjoy a relaxing half-mile tour around Tom Sawyer Island. Along the way, listen to recorded narrator in the voice of iconic American author and humorist Mark Twain, sharing memories of Twain's time on the Mississippi. Or, for the Walt Disney World Railroad, listen to the clamor of the engine, the chug of the wheels, and the call of the whistle as you travel aboard the Walt Disney World Railroad. Take your seat on one of four meticulously restored vintage narrow gauge steam trains originally built between 1916 and 1928 and enjoy a relaxing 20-minute, 1.5-mile scenic round trip tour. So there you go. There are your choices. Ron, we'll go with you first, sir.
Yeah, this is easy for me. The railroad, hands down. Love it. Ride it. It was something that Walt would have. It's classic Disney. Have to ride the railroad. So that's hands down. No question.
Not even close. Now, okay, here we go, Ron. Have you actually been on the railroad?
I have. I've even been on the steamship.
Hey, he's actually been on both of these. Outstanding. So he can give us a valid opinion. That's exciting, Ron. That's exciting. All right. So Ron says the Walt Disney World Railroad. Very good. On to you, Tony. Are you a fan of the Lily Bell, or are you going along with Ron on a trip around the Magic Kingdom on the Walt Disney World Railroad?
This is another one of those instances where I'm a fan of both. I like being on the riverboat because, as I keep saying, I'm a city boy, so that's a fun experience for me to see the countryside, even though it's fake. It's fun to take that little ride around that part of the country. But I will say the railroad is my favorite of these two.
So you are saying you love them both, but if you had to choose, you're going with the Walt Disney World Railroad.
The railroad, yes.
All right. I'm kind of like you, Tony. It's probably 52-48. 52% to 48%. It's really close. I love Mark Twain. I know I've mentioned it on the show before. Yeah. He's one of my favorite authors. So it's fun to hear, Mark Twain talk about his time on the, Mark Twain was a riverboat. He worked on riverboats before he was an author and everything. So that's pretty cool throwback to, the day, the 1800s, and when steamships were, a big mode of transportation in our country. But the Walt Disney World Railroad, man, it just goes back to, Walt Disney having his own little miniature railroad in the backyard of his house in California. And that inspired the railroad going around Disneyland when they finally built Disneyland in the 50s. And man, you just can't beat a trip around around Walt Disney World, around the Magic Kingdom on that train. I know that it's been closed right now for quite a while. It closed during the pandemic and stuff, and it hasn't reopened yet. But I can't remember the last time I rode on that thing. So I'm in need of another trip on the Walt Disney World Railroad. I can remember going back. You guys remember, you know what, Tony, you weren't there. You didn't go until the 90s. When they were building Splash Mountain in the late 80s, they had to build that Frontierland, build Splash Mountain around the Frontierland station. If you remember, when you ride the railroad, it actually goes into the mountain, and you can see the last scene of Splash Mountain. So while they were building that, the Walt Disney World Railroad literally traveled from Main Street to the Frontierland station, stopped, and then just went back to the Main Street station backwards.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
You would travel to Frontierland, and it would be like, oh, that's the end of the line, and then you could ride it. It would go backwards back to the Main Street station. It didn't go around. So I remember that as a kid. It was funny. I remember when they had built Mickey's Birthday Land. There was a whole, it was the Mickey's Birthday Land Express, and there was a whole song about Mickey's 60th birthday. I have a lot of great memories about the Walt Disney World Railroad. So it looks like it's a unanimous decision today. All three of us are going with the Walt Disney World Railroad.
Listen to the complete show on your favorite podcast streaming services, now including Apple Podcast and Spotify. Find us online at WDW Reflections Podcast. Tune in each week for a new episode of What's Your Favorite? Here on the WDW Reflections Podcast.